Is working, and what is working is that we are not targeted. You know, we're not just talking about what goes through people. We're talking about whatever goes down a drain. In an area like this, that can include household chemicals. It can even include things like the pharmaceuticals that go through people. But it doesn't tend to include a whole lot of industrial waste. The big cities are trying to get rid of stuff that no responsible grower would want on their crops. You know, I even question the so-called clean, the EQ, when you look at what's in it, when you look at the ability of pathogens to multiply under the right circumstances. Even that is something that most responsible growers would not want on their crops. But the stuff coming out of the cities is essentially toxic waste, and more people know it. And so we are able to successfully keep that stuff out of here with our numerical limit. We can't actually discriminate on place of origin by law, but we can set a numerical limit and a quality limit. I don't think that, you know, it's not simply, if we were to go ahead with the ordinance that's in draft form, it's not simply a matter of circulating it and getting comments. It has had no environmental review, and it would need extensive environmental review. We would need not only a no project alternative, which is no ordinance, but to look at, the first question is it responsible to land apply this stuff at all or not, and then under what circumstances? And we would need a lot of more work done. We would need, for example, a strong program of neighbor notification of any application. We would need an appeals process by which an objecting neighbor, we would need a lot more than just sort of in-house decision-making from things that come over the transom. So the draft that's there, and I don't fault anyone, we're short-staffed in a lot of departments right now in terms of working on such a thing. So obviously the very best thing to do is continue for as long as we can with what seems to be working reasonably well, which is the interim ordinance. It has kept the big players out with what everybody sees as toxic waste. And if I could just add one note that is relevant, I think your federal legislative platform needs to include opposition to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Although the negotiations are secret, it is more and more apparent that it would allow international dumping and the preemption of all local regulation environmentally to protect our soil. Thank you.
Lindy Owen from Los Osos. I urge you to take the option 1 to go ahead and extend the interim ordinance. But I also believe it's time to have that conversation. We're talking 17 sewer plants, and we basically send it to someone else. And at one point, I will just historically go back to these alternative green sewer in Los Osos was going to have a area where all the septage from septic tanks, they're completely different beasts, but all that septage would be pumped because we were only going to collect liquid off our septic tanks and treat that. And then as the septic tanks needed to be filled, they would go out, and the idea was a type of incinerator, some kind of biological machine that's used, of course, in Europe, not in this country. We probably always need to look to Europe for innovation at this point. But it would break down enough of the septage from all the septic tanks on the north coast. And it was an option that would have brought in some income to help pay for what we were doing, and it would have created energy into a grid, which is where the plant is located now. All those options went out the door when we got stuck with the mega sewer, and they are still options, but I don't believe this county has the intention to go there. When you talk about an agronomic rate, that is the amount that we would come up with to how much we want to put on each farmland. It becomes dilution is the solution mentality. Because over years, those heavy metals and all the toxins that are in that waste, and I will agree we probably have a cleaner waste stream than LA County and some of the more industrial areas, but it still builds up, and those are items that blow in our wind. They wash into our waterways. They never go away. They're toxins. So the idea of having a conversation about taking responsibility as a county, how are we going to address the waste that is produced in this county is a very important thing. And I would extend right now the interim, but please start a county, invite people in, make it easy to discuss options and look at what some other countries do. Because the idea of incineration means we get rid of something, we lose some of the good points of that sludge, but basically I think we're further ahead if we're producing energy than we're getting a benefit. Thank you.
Good morning again, Board. David Broadwater from Atascadero. I want to, first off, thank your staff in Mr. Buckshey's shop and in the Environmental Health Division of the Public Health Agency for continuing this matter from January 29th till today. And I also want to thank the members of the agricultural and environmental organizations and civic leaders, including the Farm Bureau, Ag Liaison Board, Sierra Club, SLO, Surf Riders, the Coast Keeper, North County Watch, the Creston Advisory Body, and the South County Advisory Council, who are all engaged in this issue, and were enabled by that continuation to examine the options and submit recommendations today. As far as I can tell from looking at the comments, there's not one single comment that's not saying go ahead and approve the staff recommendation for option 1 to continue the ordinance. I want to bring your attention to the folder that I brought you. Since 1998, I've advised all members of the Board of Supervisors to have a sludge folder. In that you'll find my comments on this matter. As an added bonus, I've added into that a 4-page handout which lists the contents of sewage sludge by category. So you have an idea, an accurate idea. The last page is nothing but the references from which that material is gathered. Those are all contaminants that are issues of concern across the academic, agricultural, environmental communities. Since 1998, when the Ag and Open Space element was first passed, the direction has been to decide whether and how we're going to land apply sewage sludge. We've never answered the first question, whether or not we're going to do that. No task force has ever been put together, and both of them on which I served were denied the ability to look at alternative means of disposal of sewage sludge. The technology, the economics have evolved quite a bit over the 10 years since then. I'm not going to be able to finish my comments in the time that I have. I've been working on this for 15 years. It'd be nice if I had a little bit of extra time. But I want to point out that all the ordinances, based upon a survey of sewage sludge produced in this county, all the ordinances that have been presented to date would allow 7 and 8 times more arsenic and cadmium, 2 and 3 times the amount of lead and mercury, and 5 times the copper and nickel that is found in current sewage sludge. So even though these are called snicker exceptional quality standards, they're not. And they're not based upon the quality of local sewage sludge, which we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Broadwater.
I urge you to go for option number 1.
Good morning, Joy Fitzhugh, San Luis Obispo County Farm Bureau. Excuse me. And as it appears everybody else is, we are supporting option 1 to extend the existing moratorium ordinance. We feel that as an agricultural community, there are some potential problems, especially in the future, as different processors look at what your product is grown in or on. And so we feel that this more restrictive interim ordinance has helped solve some of that problem, because we certainly don't want outside entities coming in. And as Eric Greening very effectively said, that we can't ban them, but we can make our restrictions such that they won't be encouraged. And I think this is protecting the agricultural community as much as it is saving it for just local wastewater treatment plant use. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Lisa Bedrogi, and I'm here this morning to present a solution. I did speak with Supervisor Teixeira a little bit about this, but I'm proud to represent a team of professionals, and it really takes a lot of professionals in a number of disciplines to build the technology to do just what we're talking about today, to actually take those biosolids and convert them to fuel. Not only can we do that, but we can also de-water that sludge up to 80%, water that could go back into our groundwater basins. We could reduce our air quality emissions by reducing the trucks that are currently leaving the county to take that sludge material and convert it into other products. My hope is that the issue of land application of this product will become null and void in the next 4 years. So I do encourage you to adopt option number 1 and extend the interim ordinance and start the conversation so that we can come up with these innovative solutions. The company I represent is currently marketing this product throughout the state. They're based in Indiana, and they are currently working with Battle Creek, Michigan. They design, build, operate, and finance the equipment to municipalities and community services district. What I ask from you as each board representative, because you all do know me, if you would give me the names of the 17 sewer plants and contact individuals in your districts so that I can go out and begin the conversation and see if we can't develop a win-win solution. I will send you some more materials on it. There's an extensive flow chart that will show you the process and how we can convert these biosolids into fuel and build a better community. Thank you.
Supervisor Meacham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rich, what do you see down the line in terms of if we go with, which I'm assuming we're going to probably support staff's recommendation in the first option, to continue with an interim ordinance? What danger do we see in doing that in the length of time that we're proposing here? Is there other influences that may change the way we want to do business here by having an interim?
So far, since the so-called interim ordinance has been in effect so long, so far so good. So as far as precedent setting, it looks like we're doing a pretty good job of protecting public health and the environment. We're hoping that the scientific studies that are in progress and yet to be done in the next 3 or 4 years will really shed some light and help us come up with a permanent ordinance that would serve all the stakeholders. And so that's our hope.
Well, I'm really intrigued by Ms. Bedrogi's comments about what potential could be, and I have to agree with a couple of the speakers that said that we needed to address the issue of what we have here, because basically we're pushing it off on somebody else, and we don't want somebody else to push it off on us. So I think we need to take care of our own situation, if you will, and I think we would be open to listening to any possibility out there. So I'm encouraged to hear that there's some technology out there to do that, and look forward to the conversation.
Just a further comment on that, Mr. Meacham. The original board did ask us to take a look at alternatives. However, the resources within our department to take a look at how we might limit certain metals and other technologies like incineration, power generation, that kind of thing, was really beyond our scope of ability. So that's the reason we didn't do that. We know that an EIR at some point in time would take a look at alternatives.
Okay, just to follow up if I could, Chairman. Rich, if we were to craft something that would address the issue that Mr. Greening mentioned, the numerical limits and the content, could you craft something that basically would allow for everything to stay within our county, or I guess commerce laws would not allow that?
Correct.
And so at some point, I would assume that we're going to be influenced by outside sources somehow. And I'm not sure how we're going to be able to address that other than by those two contents, the content and the numerical limit.
Well, you'd be surprised at how many companies and counties look to see what's happening in each other county. And so they're always tracking to see what's happening. And of course, the current county situation shows us that banning biosolids is apparently not the way to go. It's going to cost Kern County a lot of money for legal fees, and we'll probably end up losing. It's going to be tough for us to limit what can come in here. We don't have a large industrial base, so we don't have those nasty chemicals and toxins that some of the large counties do have, and so that's a concern. How we can address that, I think that will be key as we work now, between now and 2017, to come up with a long-term effort that would limit what could come into the county, if at all possible.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Meacham. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Meacham's touched on a number of themes here that I think we need to craft into our motion and direction here. It's quite clear to me we do need a permanent ordinance, a long-term solution, because we have here a fundamental recycling and reuse challenge. It's just the way it is. I guess as I look at it, I'm certainly supportive of extending the interim ordinance on a number of grounds, both the cost of the EIR in the face of a number of unanswered questions. So I think extending the interim ordinance makes sense. I would think that our direction to staff would be clear. To me, there are two components to it. One of them is, as we consider a permanent ordinance, I think we need to be very clear about a proper testing and monitoring protocol if we are to consider land application. And I was somewhat encouraged in the draft that's before us that there's a nutrient heavy metals management plan as part of that draft. I think that actually needs to be strengthened. I think it needs to be expanded in its detail, both the testing, the monitoring, the allowable application rates. And then I think on the other front, I think our direction to staff should be to work with our Integrated Waste Management Authority to research and evaluate alternatives to land application as a disposal for these biosolids. This is a solid waste disposal problem, and you know, I think we need to have those range of options on the table. And I think as we look at our budgeting process, I think this is such a fundamental problem that this board needs to be able to make available the resources to our Environmental Health Division to get these important questions answered. So that's the frame of where I think we should go today.
Thank you, Supervisor Gibson. Supervisor Arnold?
Yes, I want to thank the public for being here today. We had a lot of good discussion, a lot of good information brought forward, not just from staff today, but from the public. I'm excited and optimistic about the new technology that's moving forward. So I too would tend to support the interim ordinance to remain in place, and while we are taking a look at other options that are just now being brought forward.
Supervisor Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with Supervisor Gibson on the direction that we look to work with Integrated Waste Management Authority on technologies and a future capital project. And we heard Ms. Pedrogi mention that, and you know, my own anecdotal reading of some of the things that have occurred, it seems like it is there is a possibility for this to be a very good capital project come the future. For a lot of the reasons that were mentioned, whether it be converting this to fuel or also providing a source of water that can be recycled and injected back into the aquifer. And as most of us know, working with Bill Worrell over at Integrated Waste Management, nothing seems to excite him more than getting to check out new waste recycling technologies.
Especially in Europe.
Especially in Europe, or Japan. I think he likes going there too. But I think that's a good idea, because I do think at some point we're going to need to we're going to need to look at how you know, our own waste is being handled within our own community, and there are going to be probably, even as we get there after this is extended, probably more technologies available, and that'll give everybody a chance to look at those options. So. Yeah, I think that that's a really good idea. So,
Thank you. Supervisor Meacham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to follow up with Supervisor Gibson's comment regarding the funding aspect, which I think is important. I think if we start looking at some of the highest priorities we have, waste is not going to go away. Obviously, it's with us and it's going to continue with us. So I guess as we progress through our budget discussions, I don't know how we inject something into the budget to allow for whatever is necessary. I'm not quite sure what that is at this point, what would be required from environmental health to, I guess, proceed and look for potential possibilities.
You certainly can look at that and come up with some figures for you.
That'd be great, thank you.
I think we need to have a work plan of some sort and a timeline and go from there. Supervisor Gibson.
And yes, and Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to emphasize for Mr. Meacham in particular, I'm not talking about funding the EIR at this point. That we're not there yet. But at a point, I'm ready with a motion, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to do.
A couple comments and then go from there. Mr. Buckshine.
Go ahead. I was just going to speak through a few mechanical issues, next steps, if you will, so I can wait until after the other discussion.
I totally agree with colleagues, and I think that it's come the time that, like somebody said earlier, we stop kicking the can down the road. We need to control our own resources and control our destiny. We've been, excuse me, we've been pushing this off on other entities and in other counties, and we need to start dealing with them here. The thing that really excited me about this when we started talking about it was a tour we did in Paso Robles late last year, and the fact that the city of Paso Robles was having some issues dealing with their wastewater and their biosolids. And I think it's real critical that we not only deal with the biosolids, but our wastewater also. And with the EVC and the encouragement of bringing more business into this area, we're going to see more waste generated, and we need to be dealing with it here in our own county, and the county is the best place to start. So with that, I'll go to Mr. Buckshine.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. Continuing with the interim ordinance would require, just so your board's aware, actually introducing the ordinance and then ultimately adopting it. So there are two more steps after this. This item today was simply to bring the issue forward to seek direction before we did any type of noticing of a formal ordinance. I just wanted to be clear that you'll see this twice, two more times, if you move forward with the interim. And then regarding resources, certainly we can work with Environmental Health and Health Agency on options, and that, you know, obviously fitting it into this budget schedule, depending how much information is available at this point, options might be tight. Not to say that we can't do it, but given the time frame for the interim, I think we could look at either 13-14 or the 14-15 budget to build in some longer range plans for how to address this and how to fund it.
Thank you. I think we do need to start now, though. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that I move that we extend the interim ordinance and direct staff to prepare the necessary hearing items to do that. Further, to direct staff to develop a work plan and funding requirements to continue the consideration of a permanent ordinance with special attention paid to testing the constituents of sludge that might be applied to land sites. And second, to work with the Integrated Waste Management Authority to evaluate and research alternative techniques for biosolids disposal.
Second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Meacham?
Yes.
Ms. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Teixeira?
Yes.
That dog will hunt. That dog will hunt. I'm here to tell you that dog gonna hunt.